Perfect. All right, cool. Well, hi everyone. Good morning from the sunny West Coast, and a warm welcome to everyone joining from other parts of the US or Switzerland, Europe, and other parts of the world. We're very thrilled to have you join us for this exciting Twitter Space event today, organized as part of our Swiss blockchain initiative. Allow me to briefly introduce myself. My name is Manuel Hamos, and I'm a trade commissioner at the Swiss Business Hub USA. We are the official trade and investment promotion agency of Switzerland here in the US, with offices in New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, LA, and San Francisco, where I'm based. As a team of seasoned experts, our mission is to support companies that are looking to expand to Europe and highlight the benefits of having a presence in Switzerland. We're dedicated to helping your Web3 venture expand to Switzerland and connect you with a network of outstanding partners. This includes industry experts such as Karin Lores, who we have joining here as well. She's a lawyer and founder of Lores Legal, a unique legal and compliance firm focused on fintech and Web3. Among other things, Karin created a comprehensive legal and regulatory guide for startups and individuals interested in the Swiss crypto market. Karin will be our moderator of today's discussion, and I'm happy to hand it over to her to introduce our amazing speakers and talk about how you can accelerate your Web3 venture in Switzerland. Karin, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. As Manuel already said, my name is Karin Loretz, and I'm a lawyer in the crypto space for 6 years now. I also have a crypto compliance company, which is called Scale Compliance, and have helped a lot and supported a lot of projects in the crypto space in the last couple of years. But let's go to the more to the admin stuff first. So if you want to ask questions, please ask the questions in the comment box on the right in the right corner. So we will check the comments on a regular basis, and then we will include your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them as well. Also, as a note, this Twitter space will be recorded. Just FYI, if you don't agree with it, you can leave, of course, the space. But just FYI, it will be recorded. So now I want to introduce my panelists. I'm very happy to have 2 women and 1 guy on the panel, Tracy, Maud, and Sandro. And I think Sandro is not yet on the panel, so we will start with the 2 ladies. And I would like to start with the question that I usually ask people that I meet in the Web3 space. And basically what my interest is always like, how did you get into the blockchain or Web3 space? I mean, what was the first point of contact, basically? And the second question for our panelists would be, what is it that your company do? So please introduce yourself by answering those 2 questions. And Maud, may I ask you to go first?
Of course. I'm really sorry. I've had trouble with my connection and I've been losing a little bit the sound for a little bit. Can you repeat a little bit the question, please?
Okay, the question would be, how did you get into the blockchain and Web3 space? What was the first point of contact?
Yeah.
And what is it that your company does? And you can just briefly introduce yourself as well.
Of course. So my name is Maud Banwart. I'm the COO of Alephium, which is a layer 1 blockchain that is scaling and innovating on the core technology of proof of work and UTXO to provide a decentralized, secure platform for DeFi and smart contract applications. My first point in crypto was in 2017 when I joined the Swiss exchange called Lique. And I've had at Lique, I had a lot of roles, but I would say maybe the part of my experience that was the most relevant to our talk today is that I was heavily involved in the process of a license application with the FINMA, so the regulator here in Switzerland. And now at Alephium, I am responsible for every aspect of the project that is not development related.
Okay, thank you very much. Tracy, may I ask you to introduce yourself as well?
Of course, happy to. And thanks a lot to Invest Switzerland, Switzerland Global Enterprise, and of course you, Karin, for having me. So my name is Tracy Traxler. I'm the managing director of CV Labs. We're the daughter company of CVVC, which is Crypto Valley Venture Capital. They're an early stage blockchain investor with a focus on equity investments in blockchain tech. And CB Labs is the quote unquote ecosystem builder of the business. So we're on the one hand responsible for running the acceleration program for a lot of the early stage startups that land in CBVC's portfolio, and on behalf of some clients that fund startup participation externally. We also run a number of different co-working spaces, one of which is here in Zug, Switzerland. And we organize a lot of different events and publish different research reports on sort of the state of the industry. And my sort of slippery slope venture into the world of Web3 actually started in a fairly unconventional way. At the time, I was working at a security policy research think tank as part of ETH Zurich. And we were doing a lot of different project evaluations for a lot of different industries from sort of a cybersecurity and political security perspective. And we came across a project at the time that was taking a look at utilizing blockchain tech in order to do some radar tracking in the aviation space. So I think for a lot of people, it's crypto that's sort of the gateway drug into Web3. But for me, it was very much from a different angle. I, of course, knew a bunch of, let's call them Bitcoin evangelists in my close friend group from prior. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon that project that I sort of had that aha moment where I saw the broader application value behind blockchain as a technology. And then shortly thereafter followed a good friend of mine who was one of those Bitcoin evangelists into the private sector to a consulting and software development firm that was, amongst other things, also working on blockchain projects. So that was sort of my entry point.
Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, my entry point was just to explain how I got into crypto is basically I'm originally a banking lawyer, so specialized in financial markets law. Started my career in the middle of the financial crisis, and then in 2017 I joined a bank that was actually the first bank that offered crypto or banking services to its client, and I was responsible for the legal compliance and regulatory framework and discussed it with FINMA. And and we were super happy that FINMA approved it as well. That was in the middle of 2017, so mid 2017. Sandro, I guess, is still not listed as a speaker, so we will ask him the question once he's a speaker. I would like to just explore maybe the biggest challenges that you faced and biggest challenges and barriers to entry when building like a Web3 venture. At that time it was still called crypto, right? A crypto startup. Just explain us a bit how that was. What was it that was really challenging at that time?
I think that there are a number of aspects. I think one of the first part is if you want to establish a legal entity, there is always, as a blockchain or Web3 or crypto project, there's always the issue with finding reliable banking partner. This is getting slowly better here in Switzerland, but it's always there is a lot of misconception around crypto businesses, and there are not a lot of banks who are willing to take the risk of having a customer evolving in the blockchain space. Then there is all of the aspect that first, there is a lot of areas in which you are operating that are not clearly regulated yet. So you evolve a lot in the gray area. Even if you work with lawyers, you always have to make a lot of assumption. And at the same time, the regulation evolves quite rapidly. So you always have to be mindful of how does the regulation is evolving and how is it impacting the way you've been doing your business, your operation to that point.
May I just jump in? Are you talking about the past experience or the current experience, or both?
I think I would say both, even though since over time it gets better. So obviously a lot of progress has been made on all of those fronts, but they are still the topic of regulation is still something is still something that is very much evolving. There's still a lot of areas around blockchain that are not clearly regulated. Another point maybe also is around everything that has to do with dealing with the local administration. There is a lot of education to be done, and depending on where you are establishing your venture, you are interacting with administrative and administration that are more or less familiar with blockchain. Yes. So overall, this is still a problem today, but it is improving. It has improved, and it's continuously improving over the years, especially here in Switzerland, where we are, I think, ahead of a lot of countries in that front.
Yeah, I mean, when you started, right, in 2017, there was basically no specific regulation around crypto in Switzerland. So later in 2018, for example, after the big ICO wave, so to say, FINMA, the financial markets regulator, published, or was actually the first regulator who published some guidance in terms of token classification. So that was really something big at that time. Do you remember that time?
Yes, definitely. And this is really right as I joined. So that was a really impactful moment for me, because I joined right at the first time Bitcoin hit the 20,000 mark. And I know that at the time when I joined Like, so the Swiss exchange, we saw the impact of how this regulation impacted the way projects here in Switzerland were fundraising to support their venture. But we also saw that there was also that was the point where we could start having discussion with the regulator on other topics, not necessarily related to fundraising.
Yes, and also, I mean, a lot of other countries or jurisdictions basically copied the Swiss model, right? So the token classification at that time, I mean, you can find it online, said that basically there are three types of tokens. In general, it's the first classification is a payment token, then we have the utility token and the asset token. Of course, we can also have hybrid tokens, but in general, that was the classification at that time, which I found was very helpful, also as a lawyer at that time, to give guidance to the clients, and obviously to take and discuss it, to take it up with the regulator and to discuss it with the regulator, right? So what would you say, Tracy, from a maybe different angle? I know you work a lot with startups, so you have a lot of experience there, and you see a lot of probably challenges as well. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges right now, or also in the past?
I think one of the ones that we see quite a bit, and this has been around for ages, and I don't think we're at a point where that isn't the case anymore, is that you have a lot of startups in this space that find themselves, even if they don't touch crypto, for example, but they're a blockchain startup, having to answer a lot of questions in and around crypto in the capital raising process. So if they're looking to, do a pre-seed round, if they're looking to do Series A, Series B, Series C, you're having a lot of the same conversations over and over with investors, because I think there's still a lot of education that needs to happen in order to have an investor group that, one, understands that the tech is not just that one use case, and two, I think have a healthy relationship to that use case. Right now, I think you still see a lot of, let's say, projects that are looking to build more solid regulated infrastructure, again, dealing with the backlash of bad behavior and bad lessons that we've had to learn in the last couple of years. So I think investor skepticism is something that we certainly haven't surpassed quite yet. At the moment, I would say a lot of the capital that is flowing into the space is often coming from entrepreneurs that have either made a lot of their money in this space and are now looking to diversify or give back to the community and investing it back into the tech and the young talents that it brings, or they are family offices that are looking at it again as a way, as possibly a more risky investment, but as a way to diversify their portfolio. But in general, I think it's not as bad as it was a couple of years ago. I think 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't enter a room with a potential investor and not end up having a conversation about things like terrorist financing, black market dealing, etc. That isn't the case anymore. We've come quite a way since then, but there is still a very healthy amount of skepticism in and around blockchain companies that are looking to raise funds. And I think a big portion of that is just a lack of information flow and a lack of understanding that sort of separates one prominent use case from the rest of the tech.
It's really interesting that you mentioned lack of information flow, and both of you actually mentioned education as well, that was kind of an issue as well in terms of dealing with, so to say, stakeholders like authorities or banking partners or even investors, right, Tracy? You mentioned that. So what do you think? How can we overcome these issues? Do you have a solution for it?
I wish it were. I wish it were a simple one. I think it's going to be a lot of different factors, to be honest. I think one big portion of it is the industry as a whole had a bit of a communication problem for the first couple of years, where we struggled to condense. And this is always a challenge, right? We struggled to condense our use cases, our business cases, into something that was digestible, or it put into a format that was understandable for people that weren't in this space. I think it's still overwhelming, right? When you enter Web3 as an industry, there is an awful lot of jargon that is thrown at you that seems, very familiar to those that have been around for even just a couple months. It's a very steep learning curve and people pick it up fairly quickly. But I think the first couple weeks or months can be very intimidating. So I think part of it is changing the way that we talk about what we do. And the other part is, again, just talking to people outside of the industry, right? Making sure that we don't just sort of meet within our own communities, but that we're actively going out and reaching out to the people on the periphery in order to ensure that we're not just lost within our own industry. We're not just having conversations with people that get it. We're open to questions. We're open to being challenged, because only then can we make sure that we are thinking of, the questions that people have, that we're thinking of the worries that people have, building that into our solutions, and also then again anticipating that we need to provide those answers in order to be sort of inclusive.
Yeah, makes sense. And Maud, what would you think? What is needed to overcome?
I think the first thing is it's a communication that goes both ways. So I think, Tracy, you touch a lot on what we can do on our side, but I think that what is needed and what we're again lucky to have in Switzerland is also the understanding that blockchain, Web3, crypto brings innovation and new things that cannot be put in the existing box. So there is a need for a dialogue to understand how can we adapt and regulate or discuss on something that is new, instead of simply trying to put new things into existing boxes. And here we're lucky to have this in Switzerland. I think that there is also, so if there is a desire of dialogue on both sides, I think this is already on the right track. I think if I circle back to Switzerland particularly, I think that there is a lot of effort from certain authorities, depending on where they are located, to really invest time into being educated, into collaborating with the project and the people that are in this industry to broaden their knowledge. I think that what would be needed, let's say, in the future to improve this would be maybe more global communication across the different cantons in Switzerland, across the different authorities. To give you just a concrete example that we have encountered, for example, we have found that within the VAT authorities in Switzerland, whether you are talking to the French-speaking side of the VAT authority or the German-speaking side of the VAT authorities, the experience is drastically different, because the education level on both sides hasn't been similar, and there is still, even within the same administration, the education hasn't flown throughout the entire administration. So I think that what is needed is to continue open those dialogue on both sides, but also internally to the organization, and share the knowledge that has been acquired over the last few years across the different organizations.
I agree. I mean, I also made very good experiences with FINMA in particular. I mean, their like level of knowledge in the blockchain space, it's quite. I mean, it's very good. And also the government in general has like a couple of, or had in the past a couple of initiatives. I mean, not to forget the DLT framework, basically a framework, a regulation for the blockchain space, which was which entered into force, I would say 1.5 years ago, which makes it quite, I mean, very much easy or easier to navigate as well, because you have a framework, which doesn't mean, and that's what I like in particular about Switzerland, that it's not over-regulated, and you still have the flexibility and the freedom to, as a lawyer, and Maud, you mentioned that sometimes it's not clear. As a lawyer, it's actually very interesting if it's not clear, because then you have like flexibility and room for interpretation as well, and you can go to the regulator and present your solution. And usually, I mean, they're very, very flexible, and they hear what you say. So it's not not a bad thing that it's not completely over-regulated or regulated. So for me as a lawyer, it's definitely good, and I like it. I like to work in this space particularly because of that. So, but I assume, I mean, of course, as a project, I mean, you want to know, okay, can I do it, or is it not possible, right? But for lawyers, it's definitely interesting to also push boundaries and work together with the regulator on solutions that maybe in other countries were not possible, because they have a very strict regulation frame or regulatory framework. So yeah, is Sandro here, or we have another speaker? But is it Sandro? No, is it someone else? Okay, because I just saw a hand. Well, let's continue. Otherwise, please raise your hand, and then I can open the floor for you, of course. So we were speaking about the biggest challenges, and actually I want to speak about more positive things as well, obviously, and know, okay, what factors must be in place as a startup to choose a specific country to set up its entity. I get approached by a lot of projects, and they are basically asking, well, what are the pros and cons for Switzerland? Should we choose Switzerland, or should we go to a different jurisdiction? And I, of course, have an answer for that, but I would love to hear from Tracy and Maud what you think. What are the pros, particularly for Switzerland compared to other countries or other jurisdictions?
I think one of the big ones for me, and this is one that is often overlooked, is that you have a wide breadth of, let's say, sort of key service providers that are well versed in crypto. So lawyers, I mean, Karin, you know, you're an excellent example of this. It's incredibly frustrating if, as a startup, you waste months and a lot of valuable resources and money on a law firm that, you know, doesn't immediately have answers for you, but needs to spend an awful lot of time tracking these things down, which then, of course, tallies up to a very nice bill at the end of every month. The same goes for, you know, crypto-affine tax accountants, etc. These are just services that you as a business absolutely need, but that immediately become a hurdle or a rock in your path if those are not available to you, and they're often overlooked. It's not maybe the most, let's say, obvious thing that needs to be in place, but it's absolutely mandatory.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I agree. I definitely agree. And also banks, right? Maud, you mentioned that like opening a bank account was or still is tricky. So it's not that easy. We have in Switzerland, we have a couple of banks that are specialized in crypto clients. Two of them are even like the first crypto banks that were licensed as a crypto banks. But still, Maud, what would you say? What is needed?
So obviously, as I mentioned, I think, like you said, a reliable banking partner. I think Switzerland, like you said, is compared to other countries, I think is quite ahead on this. They are few years back, if you wanted to open a bank account as a crypto business, you would have had to go to either private banks or now crypto banks. But more recently, they are even, let's say, I have the word that comes to me in French, I'm sorry, but I will say whatever words come in English for this, mainstream bank. So normal consumer banks that also are starting to onboard crypto projects. For example, in the case of Alefiam, we are using the cantonal bank of Neuchâtel as our banking partner. And this is really something that has brought a lot of peace of mind for us to know that we had someone that we could talk to in our bank, and we had a stable banking relationship. I think another point that makes Switzerland great when you're looking to establish your venture, Switzerland has an incredible pool of talent, versed in the crypto space, but also in tech. It's a small country, but the amount of talented people in the tech space that you have, it's very multicultural as well, which I think it's fantastic because blockchain and Web3 brings this diversity into companies. So yeah, I think this is everything that makes Switzerland great. And the last thing, which again I think is really important, and you touch point on this, Karin, from your perspective as a lawyer, is that the authorities, entities, companies, services, they are very open-minded to being educated. So yes, there is still works into doing this education, but at least there is a dialogue that is open. There is a willingness to learn and to accommodate and to be educated and to find together pragmatic solutions to the problematics that young businesses encounter here in Switzerland.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the pragmatic solution aspect, that's something that I found quite often when dealing with authorities and regulators. And that was really, really helpful. I mean, that's really one of the greatest point here. And also, Switzerland has, I mean, from a regulatory perspective, has this technology neutral perspective, right? Which is quite interesting. So basically, even if you are a crypto or Web3 company and you fall under a legislation that is maybe for the traditional world, it still applies to you. I mean, sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's actually good. And this I like, again, I mean, just to highlight that the regulatory framework in Switzerland is quite flexible and not too stringent as well. I'm just getting messages from Sandro saying that he is trying with different accounts. Maybe Sandro, can you raise your hand if you have a different account, not with your name? So we have Royben as speaker. I'm not sure if this is Sandro, but or not. Okay.
No, I checked with Sandro. It's not Sandro.
Okay, it's not.
I'm checking with him in the background. I hope it works.
Okay. Then we can add him as well and include him in all these experiences, which would be super nice to hear from the Cardano perspective as well. So we touched base on why Switzerland is actually attractive to set up a Web3 business. Maybe we should also dive a bit deeper and talk about the different cantons. I mean, Maud, you already said that we have different cantons, and probably one of the most famous cantons in the crypto or Web3 space is the canton of Zug, which is also called the Crypto Valley. It's where Tracy is based, right? And it's a very crypto-friendly canton. But we have more cantons. We have 26 cantons in total, so there's 25 left. And the interesting thing about the canton of Zug is really that you can set up your company in the canton of Zug with crypto assets. So you don't even need a bank account to open your company, to deposit the capital requirements there. So basically you need a wallet where you have the capital requirement, which is either 20K or 100K, or depending on if it's an LLC or an LTD. And you can deposit it, as I said, on a wallet, plus more or less 20% because of the volatility. The wallet will then be audited, and then the audit report you can then submit to the commercial registry, and they would accept it if everything is fine. So this is really something really remarkable and attractive, I find. And some of my clients actually used it because they couldn't manage to open a bank account in a very short period of time. I mean, we have to talk about time as well. I mean, we have great banks in Switzerland that open bank accounts for crypto companies, but it takes time, right? It's not... you can't open a bank account within, I would say, 2 weeks. So it takes rather 6 weeks to 8 weeks, which is quite long in my opinion. So as an alternative, you can basically come with your Bitcoin or with your ETH or USDC, USDT, probably better now, and open your company or set up your company in the canton of Zug. But let's talk about the different cantons, and maybe I will start with Tracy because you're based in the canton of Zug. So you're very local. Can you just explain, maybe there are some other advantages in the canton of Zug as well?
Sure. I mean, one of the big ones for sure is tax wise, it's just an ideal location for a business to be. There's a lot of foundations that are here. Most layer ones tend to settle their foundations here in Zug. I think for sure the taxes is one aspect. I think the other that can't be ignored is sort of the knock-on effect that the foundation of some very early projects here in Zug had on just sort of the cluster of projects that it then pulled into this region. Of course, very notably, Ethereum being founded here in 2014, all of the subsequent sort of foundations that came out of that initial group of founders. So the Web3 foundations, the Cardanos, etc., all also chose then to settle their projects here in Zug because they had very early contact with specifically local authorities. And I think that's something that speaks to the canton of Zug when you look at that local aspect, right? The authorities here are very collaborative and sort of noticed fairly early on that it was worth taking time in order to get to know the technology and to get to know the projects and the founders that were settling here and make sure that they, let's say, produce an environment that is conducive to what they're looking to build. And that goes to, the being able to pay your capital requirement in Bitcoin and Ethereum, being able to pay your taxes in crypto, etc. So it's been very collaborative from sort of the early onset. And again, that then also resulted in that sort of core network of well-versed service providers also settling in and around this region. When you look at sort of the total numbers, right, almost half of the over 1,000 companies in and around the crypto valley, which we define as all of Switzerland and Liechtenstein combined, almost half are settled in Zug. Now, of course, you have huge clusters in Zurich, particularly for those that are looking to access sort of the financial sector. You have clusters in and around the French-speaking parts, very heavy sort of cybersecurity aspects, etc. And you have Ticino that is certainly alive and well and making a big push in order to become attractive to these startups. But Zug was there sort of from the onset as almost a service provider from a government perspective, which I think is a very foreign concept to a lot of my US colleagues. The idea that you get treated by the government as though they are providing you with a service, and they take time out of their day to sit down with you and really understand your business. So that's fairly unusual. And again, the sort of knock-on effect that it had of drawing in, let's say, a lot of the early businesses that have become sort of cornerstones of what has been built in and around Crypto Valley certainly isn't to be underestimated. I mean, a Bitcoin Swiss will have been here for 10 years this year, which is a very exciting milestone. So I think there's a lot of history here, which is certainly
there is. I think one point that you mentioned is really important. I mean, that the authorities really sit down with you and try to understand your project and what you're doing. So they're enabling, so to say, your businesses as well, and where they can support and help, they do it, right? And that's that's really remarkable. I would say it's very unusual from an outside perspective, but that's definitely how it is in Switzerland, in at least in the crypto space. Maud, you are not based in Zug, right? So can you maybe give us some insights as well, why you chose another canton? What was the reason for it, and what are the pros and cons again?
Yes, of course. So Alafim was first incorporated in the canton of Vaud. That was mainly a convenience at the time, because a lot of the original contributors to the project came from EPFL, which is the Swiss Technology Institute engineering school. And so due to the close proximity, at first we were in the Vaud canton, but maybe the Vaud canton isn't the most crypto-friendly canton that you have here in Switzerland. And we had a lot of so we knew that we wanted to move out of the canton of Vaud, just to have the opportunity to have a more open dialogue with the different authorities, and also to find a better banking partner. And when we decided to change, we looked at different options. Obviously Zug, also Zurich and Neuchâtel. The reason that we chose Neuchâtel in our case, one, it was again convenience. We have people in Switzerland, in Zurich, in Geneva, in Lausanne, also in Neuchâtel. And Neuchâtel was kind of a central point for all of us within Switzerland to meet. Also, we wanted the banking relationship is what we wanted the most. And while there are few options for crypto projects, a lot of them are private banks with private bank cost in terms of cost to be a customer. And Neuchâtel is the first cantonal bank to really make a push to onboard crypto project. And one of the requirements is to be headquartered in Neuchâtel. Another point is the crypto communities in Switzerland are, like you said, there are different clusters, and depending on what started the cluster, you have a very different community. So around Zurich and Zug, you have a lot of finance, compliance, legal experts within the crypto space. Neuchâtel is a much more, also has its expert, but if you look at the local community, those are more, let's say, hardcore privacy, decentralization maximalists, which for us, based on what Alefium is doing, this community was more in line with the community that we need for the project, that made sense for us to be a part of. So this is why we chose Neuchâtel. And also there's been a big push from the Economic Promotion Administration to really attract more crypto projects and capitalize on this community that has built there organically. And we were very lucky. And I think to go back to what Tracy said about, the administration really providing a service to you and treating you like as they are providing service to you. We had an opportunity before moving to Neuchâtel to go sit with the tax authorities to explain what we were doing, and discuss about the fact that we wanted to move to Neuchâtel and have an open discussion with them. So that was a big plus for us.
Okay, yeah, very interesting insights from both of you. And I would just like to understand, I mean, how do you think Switzerland could improve or do better? I mean, we've heard a lot of positive things here, but what is missing? I mean, just if you could create a wish list, to say, to Switzerland, to the government of Switzerland, to Switzerland, what would it include?
Maybe I'll go first. There's two things that always come to mind. The first, and I'm sure this is something Maud's spoken on once or twice now already today, but I think it's something that needs to be mentioned again, particularly on the banking side. You have absolutely excellent banks that provide some very necessary services, but I think one of the ongoing struggles on specifically the blockchain business side is finding a commercial bank that will allow them to facilitate easy payment transactions, etc., at a scale that is business compatible. And I think that's something that's certainly still lacking in terms of you have maybe one or two players that really provide it, or again, it's a private bank that does so at a cost that isn't necessarily palatable for a young startup that's moving into the space. That's the first one. And the second one, of course, is specifically with regards to talent. You have Schengen accessibility for anyone that's in and around Europe. But at the end of the day, blockchain is a global industry, and there are talents from around the world that are founding excellent startups that have excellent ideas that would be very welcome here in Switzerland, but they might struggle specifically with regards to getting access to a visa in order to actually be able to come and build and maintain that project here. So I think the sort of international talent inflow and the compatibility of making that easily accessible is something that's still, I think, an ongoing point of discussion, right? You of course have some huge players like Google, for example, sitting in Zurich that gets quite a bit of that talent inflow secured. But at the end of the day, particularly smaller cantons, because the number of visas is regulated from canton to canton, and smaller cantons just tend to be a bit less lucky when it comes to their allocation on that front, tend to then struggle in order to attract that international talent.
Yeah, fair points. Yeah. What about you, Maud? What do you think?
I think on my side, I would say maybe better sharing of the knowledge that has been acquired in certain space. I mentioned the example of the VAT administration. So I think that, continuing the work that has been done with a focus of a lot of knowledge has been acquired in the canton of Zug, a lot of knowledge has been acquired in certain areas of Switzerland because of this early access, this early exposure they had to blockchain. I think working to spread this knowledge that has been acquired across the country is something that I would want to continue to see or to continue to increase. However, one thing that I do like about Switzerland is that even being a small country, we do have very different crypto communities, different on the canton. And I do like, I would like to keep this somehow. For me, I like that there are different crypto communities, different Web3 communities that are gathering around shared interest, and that you have this diversity, because I think this is also what brings excellent perspective for the country. So I would want to try and not uniformize. Oh my God. I'm really sorry. The word keeps coming to me in French, but I would want to keep those different Web3 identity, but while still spreading knowledge across the knowledge that has been acquired across the different administration services as well. Yes. And I can only second the point of Tracy on the talent. Switzerland has a great position, being at the center of Europe, having easy access for people that are come from Schengen. But every time you step outside of that, the procedure are quite lengthy and complicated for a starting business. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. I actually like the concept of sharing knowledge across the different cantons, the different states in Switzerland. So in practice, how would we do that? Would like all the cantons sit together or have a round table and just share their knowledge and experience like on a regular basis, or what would you suggest? Because I think that's a very good point, because let's say in Zug, particularly in Neuchâtel, but also in Zurich, there's a lot of experience, right, with Web3 companies, but maybe in other cantons, not so much. So how could that, again, the information flow, basically, how could we improve that?
Maybe it could be, it can be as simple as maybe people with more knowledge organizing workshop, and maybe other administration allowing administration and services allowing their personnel to take time to educate themselves on those topics. Again, I'm sorry, I take the example that I have, but the cantonal bank in Neuchâtel, there was someone within the bank that pushed for this, and they gave him the space to develop the activity. So it could be twofold, right? One would be from the people of the knowledge giving, proactively proposing knowledge sharing opportunities, whether it is workshop, roundtable meetings, but also on the other side, in the side that has a little bit less knowledge, giving space to the people within their rank that are interested into gaining knowledge, giving them the space to educate themselves as well.
Yeah, so we're mentioning education a lot. So, and I agree with it. I'm a lecturer at the University of Zurich, and I have each year I have a lot of interesting students from the space and also not from the space. So I had a lot of students from the banking area, even from Swiss National Bank, from the police, from authorities as well, from real estate companies, etc., etc. So what was interesting over the last 4 or 5 years when we started this course is that it changed basically, or it shifted. So the first students were mainly coming from the banking sector, and now more and more I see that it's widening up basically in different industries as well. Unfortunately, I haven't seen that many students from authorities. I mean, from FINMA, yes, but not from like other authorities. And I would also wish that they would be interested in learning more about blockchain, crypto, so that they know what it is basically, and also can may also support the startups and the businesses a bit better. So definitely, I think we all agree that education is very important and that we need to push that as well. I mean, one reason why I set up this website, which is called SwissCryptoGuide.com, is because I just wanted to have some like knowledge out there. People can just browse the website and check the website and read. It's free, so it doesn't cost anything. Usually, lawyers cost from minute 1 or minute 0, I would say. So this is certainly something I wanted to give to the space, just to get an idea. Okay, how can I navigate through the crypto space in Switzerland? Is it even interesting for me from a regulatory perspective or not? So that they don't have to basically contact a lawyer and spend a lot of money on that, just to find out if Switzerland is suitable or not. So speaking of education, I mean, not on an authorities level, but in general with people, what would you say would be good? Is it workshops, as you mentioned, Maud, that we sit together and gather together and create really like a community or even more of a community?
Yeah, I think any opportunity to open dialogues with actors, individuals that have not been exposed to crypto before should be encouraged. I think maybe just another point to give a bit of perspective, because we are in Switzerland and the financial industry here in Switzerland has always been a big thing. I think it's also important that we remember that while blockchain and Web3 has a lot of promises around the financial world, it goes beyond that. There are other applications. There are other aspects of Web3 that need to be discussed that are not necessarily related to the financial system. So I think making sure that we keep this diversity that we have here in Switzerland when sharing this knowledge, and make sure that we are inclusive of the different type of project in whatever initiative we push forward.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I mean, it changed. Obviously, in the beginning it was all about like the financial industry, and now nowadays we have a lot of NFT projects, right, and other projects going on, which are very, very interesting, and we should very inclusive, as you said, and open. And I just wanted to ask Tracy. I know that you work with a lot of startups, and that you have some insights, which would be very interesting to hear. Do you know of, are there any acceleration programs or funding programs for Web3 ventures? Are you supporting them? And also, I mean, next to funding and acceleration programs, is there also an education program that you're offering?
So on the acceleration side, yes, of course. So actually, we're kicking up our next acceleration batch at the end of this month. So we'll have the pleasure of welcoming 9 young startups from all over the world. I think 4 of them are actually coming from the African continent, which is very exciting, and welcome them here for a 1-week intensive boot camp, and then 9 more weeks of education that covers everything from like the very technical stuff to the legal side to their sort of go-to-market strategy, etc. And we always like to think that what we offer them isn't just the program itself and sort of the investment that comes along with it from CVC side, but we offer them really sort of the exposure and point of entry into the wider Crypto Valley network. Again, that means access to excellent service providers, access to potential business partners, access to potential clients, etc. So that's sort of how we like to think of our value add, that we're not just an accelerator, but we're really sort of an accelerator plus an entire, let's say, well-rounded Web3 network that comes with it. But of course, we're not the only ones. We have some absolutely lovely companions here in Switzerland. One of the big ones that we've worked with in the past, and they're very, very good friends of ours, are our friends over at Plug and Play. That they now actually just for the first time launched a crypto-specific acceleration program. And you have, of course, in general, a lot of excellent startup networks in and around the universities. When you look at specifically Swiss startups, a substantial amount of them are actually university spin-offs. So they start out as university projects and then end up sort of moving out onto their own.
Yeah, that's and also, I mean, we unfortunately Sandro can't speak, but I know for a fact that Cardano is really active in promoting and providing education as well and sharing their knowledge. So if you're interested in hearing what Cardano has to offer, I mean, I would say just reach out to them. Maybe Sandro can add something in the comment section here on the right side. Maybe you can add something that we should mention, or that we can mention how to contact Cardano best, or what you guys do. And then also I would like to invite you again, if you have any questions, please send them to us. We're happy to take them.
Maybe, sorry,
Sure,
if I may just add something. So we were discussing Accelerator. I think another point maybe that is worth mentioning, there are also a lot of spaces that are organized around blockchain Web3 projects. You have Trust Square, for example, in Zurich. So you have a lot of smaller ecosystem and just physical space for Web3 venture to also establish themselves and integrate an ecosystem of projects as well. In Neuchâtel also, there are efforts to make a blockchain specific co-working space. I know that in Lausanne, the EPFL, I think, was also so in the Vaud canton, was also working into having kind of a location for early stage Web3 and security related venture. So there are also a lot of those initiatives that are being pushed in the different, let's say, Web3 cluster around the country.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So if we don't have any questions, then I would like to hand over for the final speech, or for the final words, to Manuel.
Thank you very much, Karin. Yeah, thank you so much to Tracy, Maud, and you, Karin, for this very insightful conversation. Sorry that we didn't manage to bring Sandro to the stage, but as you mentioned, please do not hesitate to reach out to him, to the Cardano Foundation directly if you have specific questions for him as well. And thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. If you are planning to expand your business to Switzerland and want to explore opportunities, please contact us at invest@s-ge.com, or feel free to DM on Twitter or other social channels. And we're also going to share our contact details and in the chat box as well. And please also make sure to check out our new landing page at sg.com/blockchain. And I hope to connect with some of you bilaterally soon. And again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.